Welcome to the Rivals Rankings podcast. I'm National Recruiting Analyst and Rankings Director Adam Friedman, here with National Recruiting Analyst John Garcia Jr. John, the very first full Rivals 250 of the 2026 class was revealed earlier this week, and now we've seen the offensive and defensive position rankings go public as well. Now, John, we did see one new five-star in the Southeast during this update. That's linebacker Tyler Atkinson. You now have two five-stars in the Southeast, with Kenai Pepe, the offensive tackle out of IMG Academy. But what did you see out of Atkinson that pushed him up to five-star status?
Well, this is maybe the most active player in the class of 2026, not only on Friday nights, but even in the camp setting. We saw him at Under Armour Atlanta. He worked out entirely with the defensive line and then stayed and did the entire linebacker workout. And that's just kind of who he is. We don't know positionally between the two where he's going to end up, but right now, 6'2", 6'3", over 200 pounds, triple-digit tackler, and a clear third down trait as a pass rusher with great twitch, enough speed and power, and enough of a frame to fill out here going forward. So these are the kind of guys that it's a bit of a safer bet to bet on, especially when you talk about the production coming at Grayson High School, which is one of the premier schools in the Peach State.
That's right. Well, he wasn't the only guy in the Southeast moving up the rankings. Strong side defensive end Jordan Carter, receiver Devin Carter, and then we've had some high debuts in tight end Caden Prothro and cornerback Kisani Giles. So you've gotten to know these guys really well already in this spring and over the last few years, really, during the evaluation process. What stands out to you about these guys, and what made you push these guys up the rankings?
Yeah, obviously they all had really strong 2023 seasons, and then the refresh of that evaluation this offseason has been nothing but positive. I think Jordan Carter, in a class that so far isn't dominant with these longer, twitchier edge rushers, I think he could assimilate to becoming one of the premier guys. He continues to show it after a banner 2023 season. Devin Carter, one-time Florida State commitment, looks like one of the premier receivers. He's big, he's long, he's incredibly fast, ran that verified 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, but he's not just a speed guy. There's polish there, mature beyond his years in his own right. Kisani Giles, you mentioned, another IMG guy that we see consistently, just performed at the Rivals Camp Los Angeles, a long, lean cornerback who's great at the catch point. Again, all of these guys have traits where the length and the production is starting to measure up as they get a little bit older. So that progression is what you want to see as you start to sort of bump their ranking up.
Yeah, and I'm a big Caden Prothro guy. I really like what I saw from him on film, and he's got that frame that's going to really fill out 6'6", close to 210, and he runs a 4.7 as a tight end. I mean, and he's pulling away from defenders in the open field. He's a great route runner. Really like his skill set there. But there's a really intriguing position battle brewing in the Southeast at quarterback. Dia Bell, Noah Grubbs, Brady Hart, Will Griffin, and Landon Duckworth are all ranked pretty high in the Rivals 250. All except for Duckworth come from Florida. What do you see out of this group of quarterbacks that make them also highly rated? And how do you, I guess, project this quarterback race moving forward?
Yeah, it's really tight already, right? I think most of the guys you mentioned are all top 100, and some of them are like 2 or 3 spots between each other. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. But who said there's not quarterbacks in the state of Florida? It's a bit of a renaissance in this 26 group. And the beauty of it is that they're all so different. Will Griffin, big, physical, almost, maxed out, 6'3", 220 type of frame. Looks like he's getting ready to throw on Sundays, not Saturdays. So how much more does he progress? And then physically, how do these other guys catch up? Dia Bell, the son of Raja Bell, long and lean as you would expect, but a great athlete, a great maturity to his game, great composure. Brady Hart maybe had the best 2023 season of these guys. A breakout performer at Cocoa High School, led them to a state championship, throwing to Javon Boggs and company, just a ton of production to him. And look, 6'3", 6'4" in his own right. Noah Grubbs, more of the classic prototypical quarterback, 6'4", maybe 6'5" at this point, incredibly polished, and the ball just jumps out of his hands. And then Duckworth, dual threat, bigger, and another guy, just a bigger quarterback. We're just seeing this group step up with physicality, in terms of their presence, but also the production in 2023 to start to back it up. So it's going to be a very fun race. And yeah, some of these guys might not be done ascending here in the South.
Yeah, I was just getting at that. I mean, I think I saw Will Griffin and Landon Duckworth at least once, maybe twice last off season. Certainly got to see all the film from them this fall. Really impressed with their ceilings and how far they've come. But my pick to move up the rankings further, at least I've got confidence in him going forward. Brady Hart. I think he's got a lot of untapped potential there. Huge frame, big arm, already ready. They're playing against elite competition. I think he's got a chance to move higher as the rankings process moves forward. Thank you, John, for joining me here on the Rivals Rankings podcast. Make sure you catch all of John's content on rivals.com and give him a follow on Twitter and Instagram at John Garcia Jr. Thanks so much, John.
Thank you.
I'm joined now by national recruiting analyst Greg Smith to discuss the first full Rivals 250 in the 2026 class. Greg, thanks so much for joining me here on the Rivals Rankings podcast. I want to start with the race for number one in the country. Jakeem Smith is right there at the top. He has been dominant throughout the process, but you've got a guy in your region who is about as talented as anybody in the country, might have the best bloodlines of anybody in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That's Jackson Cantwell, a five-star offensive tackle, number one offensive lineman in the entire country.
Yeah, any other year, I feel like Jackson Cantwell would have like a grip on that number one spot. Being an offensive tackle that is 6'8", 300 pounds, with both of his parents being Olympians. Like anytime that happens, like you said, with those bloodlines, you do tend to perk up. So obviously he's got the bloodlines, got the size. He's also got really sweet feet for that size. He plays with a mean streak. Like I think that he is a really, really good prospect. His offer list obviously has everyone around the country, and he's been all over the place here recently during the spring. Most recently, he was at Georgia. I talked to him about that, as did our guys over the Georgia site here, and he told me that it really stood out to him getting to try on the offensive line coach's bowl rings. And I put out a picture of him with his big mitts, with I think not even actually he didn't say all of those rings. He said some. There's some because they've had so many down there, and it was a really cool picture that stood out to Jackson. Georgia is going to be really in that picture for him, but he's a great prospect that's going to be able to basically decide wherever he wants to go in the country. And he's if anyone's going to chase down Jakeem, it could be Jackson Cantwell. But the only thing holding him back maybe is we need to see Jackson with some better against some better competition. It would be nice to see him in like an all-star setting or a big camp, where he was going to be able to go up against some of the guys like Jakeem and some of the others, to see him, kind of dominate that type of competition as well. But he's a great prospect.
Yeah, just outside five-star range, too, is another offensive tackle, Maxwell Riley out of Ohio. Big offensive tackle. I know you're obviously really high on as well, right?
Yeah, definitely high on Max Riley, and he's another guy too that these offensive linemen are all like they have really good size, but they're very good athletes as well. When you're talking about some of these elite offensive linemen, guys that don't have a lot of bad weight, can really move their feet and are both good run and pass blockers. And Max Riley is definitely that. He just picked up an Alabama offer not too long ago here. He's a kid too that Ohio State is taking a look at. I think that's where he's probably leaning at this point. But I do think that Max Riley is another one of those really good prospects that really is going to be on the verge of five-star territory right now and could really make a strong push into that as we move through the cycle.
Yep, and there are a lot of new additions in your region to the ranking this time around, but one of the few risers was Jared Curtis. I know you like what we've seen from him on film. I got a chance to see Jared in person earlier this spring and really like the tools he brings to the table. He's got really good arm strength. He's got just great size. He's got excellent mechanics. He sees the field well. He just doesn't play great competition during the season, and we're going to get a chance to see more of him as the offseason continues, but he's a guy who might push for five-star status down the road. He's certainly a really talented quarterback who teams across the country are pursuing. But in terms of the guys who were new additions to the rankings, I know somebody else you're really high on is J.C. Anderson.
Yeah, JC, when we're talking about kind of do it all tight ends and guys that can both be inline blockers, but also really flex out and catch passes, JC is the perfect example of that. And you look at the frame at 6'7", 230 pounds, you automatically think that's a guy that can go up and win a 50-50 ball for you. But when you hear about that frame and you watch him on tape, like he is not lumbering, right? Like he's a kid that moves very well for that size, which is why so many colleges are in on him right now. He's a guy that continues, like during the winter, he really blew up, and he's continuing to get offers right now as we kind of go through, kids are going out on these visits. I think just today he picked up Ole Miss. He'll continue to pick up offers from both inside the region and out of region. And that's when you really know about, especially early on, these kids in the Midwest a lot of times have kind of these regional offers, and then it takes until a little bit later for them to pick up those national offers. When you start to get SEC offers as a 2026 in March right now, you're on to something if you're JC Anderson.
Well, very good. Well, thank you, Greg. Really appreciate you joining me here on the Rivals Rankings podcast. Make sure you catch all of Greg's content on rivals.com, and make sure you give him a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Greg Smith Rivals. Thanks so much, Greg.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm now joined by national recruiting analyst Marshall Levenson to continue discussing the first full Rivals 250 for the 2026 class. And Marshall, there really is no better place to start than with the number one guy in the entire country, Jakeem Stewart. You just saw him at a camp. What were your updated thoughts on Stewart, who looks to be one of the best prospects on the D-line we've seen in some time?
Yeah, well, luckily, I saw him the day before the 5 stars were announced, and this was the first time I've seen Stewart in person. You see the videos, you see the photos, and it doesn't do it justice. I mean, when he walks up, you kind of like, yep, no, that's passes the eye test. That's exactly what you're looking for there. And then he puts the cleats on, and I mean, the size, the speed, the athleticism, the twitchiness, but also it's the competitiveness, the attitude, it's all there in one package. And so, I mean, it was not hard to be like, yeah, okay, I can see why others have deemed him number one. And that's certainly where he belongs. But yeah, I mean, he has from a prospect profile, certainly has a chance to be one of the top guys, if not the top, defensive line conversation over the last 5-10 years, certainly.
Yeah, he's got the physical traits to be a 5-star, I think, in the 2025 class if he were to decide to reclass. But we've seen Jakeem multiple times throughout his high school career, 6'6", 265, 270 pounds, strong as they come, quick for that size. He's a lean 265 and has a really good technique, can play inside, can play outside. Yeah. He is, like you said, super competitive, isn't jaded by the rankings and all the hype. It seems like he just wants to continue to improve, year after year, month after month, and from one season to the next. So really excited about Stewart. And, he's got some really talented players chasing him and the rankings. Jackson Canwell's right up there, one of the most physically talented offensive tackles and that we've seen in a while. And he's got great genes too with, Olympians as parents, but Stewart just has proven it time after time so far. And for now, Stewart, it will stay at number one. There were a couple of guys in your area of the country, that Mid-South region, that were able to move up the rankings based off of what we saw from them this spring, getting an updated look at these guys in person. One of them was Danny Beal. He played defensive line, he played offensive line. Where do you think he's going to see the most time at the next level?
I think it's defensive line. We saw him in camp recently in Dallas, and he played defensive line, solely at the camp and just dominated. I mean, he has the body type for it. And I mean, you could tell from his, his athleticism and the strength there, he can play that interior offensive line position, which he does, obviously, and at a high level. He has a number of his offers that are to play offensive line at the next level. But I mean, defensive line, that's where he projects long term, and we moved him just. He debuted quite very high in the rankings, and I think he has a chance, to continue to move up as he, if he focuses on that defensive line position. He was a very impressive prospect that you normally don't see maybe that development at one position if they're a two-way guy.
Yeah, number 54 overall in the Rivals 250. You saw some clips of him just ragdolling some offensive linemen. Really love the the hand strength in Danny Beal and the way he's able to combine that with his short area quickness and able to really use some of that leverage to his advantage as well. Going to be great to watch him as the offseason rolls on. A guy who I've seen a couple of times, and I know you've seen him plenty, is Keshawn Henderson. He moved up a little bit as well and made the move from athlete to receiver, which I think just seems very logical for his skill set. What have you seen from Henderson that makes you think he's one of these top prospects in the country? He's number 32 overall in the Rivals 250 as things stand right now.
Yeah, I've seen him in the the 7-on-7 scene as well as camps and combines. And I mean, he fits the mold of what you're looking for at that next level receiver. He's a big prospect. He's got a frame that can fill out, but he plays quarterback for his high school. But at wide receiver, I mean, even though he's big, he's crisp running routes. He has strong hands. You can kind of tell he knows what defenders are trying to do to him. He'll set him up. He has just those quick twitch muscles to get in and out of breaks. I think they even said he plays, some safety occasionally in 7-on-7. And so he's just an all around athlete. But we did make the move over to wide receiver. And we were talking to a couple people at camp recently that I think some of his offers are at quarterback, which is, like I said, is what he plays for his high school. But his makeup and his mold, I think he can really turn out to be a very quality outside receiver that even has, like I said, the movement skills to move inside and move in space, even with a bigger frame.
Yeah, I mean, I had a camp that I saw him at, I guess it was last off season. I got to watch him throw the ball around. He also took a couple of reps at receiver, and he's got some arm strength to him, and he can get the ball down the field, but mechanically he's got a little ways to go there. And seeing the field as an advanced passer, there also has some room to grow in that area. But his skill set just translates so well to receiver. He is a glider. He's a long strider. He's got good quickness in his feet. He catches the ball with his hands, and he seems to have just a savvy to his route running abilities that allows him to create separation, not just with speed and his 6'3" frame, but with those technical routes that we're going to need to see more of from him as we move into the college game. The one more thing that stuck out to me, Marshall, as we look further into the Mid-South region in the 2026 classes, kind of the lack of high-end quarterbacks. We've been on a really good run over the last few years of high-end quarterbacks coming out of Texas and the whole Mid-South region, but this year just two in the Mid-South region in the Rivals 250, Quinn Murphy and Kane Archer, Quinn out of Texas and Kane out of Arkansas. Over the last few years, I mean, we've got last year was DJ Lagway, Mabry Metauer. Before that was Jackson Arnold. And before that, we've got Connor Wegman and, Cade Klubnik, all these guys super talented at the high school level. Quinn Ewers before that too. I mean, there's just not many of them right now. Is this something that we're going to see change? Are there going to be more quarterbacks that emerge out of the Mid-South, or are we just kind of stuck here with these two guys leading the way?
No, I think we're going to see, a handful over the next year or so emerge and find themselves in the rankings. I think like you've just mentioned, I think we've been a little bit spoiled with so many quarterbacks at so many top programs, so that they've been in the media's eye, been, playing for state championships and such. I think a lot of these younger guys, because there have been a run of so many top guys, I think they've been pushed down some depth charts here and there. So even at some of these top programs, they haven't really emerged yet, but I see it coming. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that we've been out and seen, in the camp scene and everything that can really spin it and have the size you're looking for. I just don't think they've, taken that next step yet. So Quinn Murphy, I think he's number one quarterback in Texas for this class right now, and he'll have a chance to stay there. But I think in Texas, you're going to see quite a few more. And I think you're going to see a couple, even in Oklahoma, emerge over the next year or two that'll likely find themselves in contention to go into the rankings. But definitely maybe I won't say lackluster, but a lesser number of guys we've seen at this point in the class as recent classes, like with all of the top guys you mentioned who ended up as upper echelon 4 or 5-star guys.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, thank you, Marshall, for joining me here. I'm National Recruiting Analyst and Rankings Director Adam Friedman. Make sure you give Marshall a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Marshall Rivals. Same handle on both. And of course, you can catch all of Marshall's content on rivals.com. Thanks a lot, Marshall.
Thank you.
I'm now joined by National Recruiting Director Adam Gorney as we continue to break down the first full Rivals 250 for the 2026 class. Adam, there is a new number one prospect out west. That's Ohio State wide receiver commit Chris Henry Jr. Do you think he's going to be able to hold on to that spot with two new five-star quarterbacks right on his tail in Brady Smigel and Ryder Lyons?
Yeah, he's new because he moved out here. It's not that he jumped up in the rankings. He had been an early five-star for us and now plays at Mater Dei. I think the quarterbacks are definitely going to give him a run for his money, but Chris Henry is a very special prospect. We're coming off of a recruiting class where Jeremiah Smith was number one overall. And so there's a little bit of hangover there, and we're a little hesitant to maybe do that again. But Henry was at the Elite 11 last year with Jeremiah Smith, and they're very similar looking prospects. They're big and tall, strong kids. So Henry has a lot of those characteristics as well. He's a very special kid. I think right now the quarterbacks are going to push him, but Chris Henry could definitely keep that number one spot.
Yeah, well, let's talk about these quarterbacks for a minute here. Smigel and Lyons were both at the Rivals camp in Los Angeles just last weekend or 2 weekends ago. You got a chance to see both of them up close yet again. What were some of the things that pushed these guys up to five-star status?
Yeah, the good thing is we've seen a lot of them over the years. In California, there's 7-on-7 in camps every weekend. So, you see these guys pretty often. Ryder Lyons has been around to a bunch of events this offseason, and Smigel has been, right before the LA camp, he was playing at the Shock Doctor Legends tournament where we saw him again. Before that, it was something else, and before that, it was something else. What that's good. That's a good thing because the more you see these guys, the more they build their resume, and after a while, you get a book on each one of them, and you feel comfortable. Now, both put up huge numbers as sophomores. And stats are just kind of one consideration. And quite honestly, both of them put up huge stats because they threw the ball a ton. So so that's only just one consideration. But Smigel they're different. Smigel is more of a pocket quarterback, big kid, big arm, great accuracy, a coach's son, kind of the gym rat type who is critical of himself. And he had 14 interceptions last year. That helps when you have 48 touchdown passes, but 14 interceptions. So he wants to get that number down into his junior year, work on his decision-making a little bit more. He's that type. And then Ryder Lyons, and I've written this before, he's like a better Jackson Dart at the same stage. Very confident in himself, kind of swaggerish, kind of plays with a little bit of an edge. He also ran for nearly 1,000 yards and 23 touchdowns last year. So he's kind of got like Johnny Manziel in him without being, messed up in a lot of ways. So I think those two, they're definitely different players and bring something different to the field, but both exceptional quarterbacks who know how to put up big numbers on Friday night.
Yeah, Smigel almost reminds me of an early stages Julian Sayin, almost, where he's so technical and he's so cerebral, whereas Lyons has a little bit more of that ad lib game to him where he can run around and make plays. The quarterback who he kind of reminded me on film of was Caleb Williams back on the East Coast here, where he was able to kind of run around and launch the ball down the field, but he was also able to make some guys look pretty silly with his feet as well. So those are just a few of the guys out there on the West Coast that I'm really excited about. Here on the East Coast, we had a couple of movers, but the big one was Kendra Harrison, a tight end out of North Carolina. He made headlines by shattering a backboard during a high school basketball game. He went on to win a state championship in basketball, and there's some thought that he could end up playing both sports at the next level, but he just strikes me as such a rare prospect at that position. And we've seen some really good tight ends over the last few years. Gorney, when you see Harrison on film and you got a chance to actually see him in person last offseason at a camp on the West Coast, what really struck you about his potential?
Yeah, I love multi-sport guys, and I love basketball players who are pass catchers because if you can be super athletic on a basketball court, then you're like off the charts athletic on a football field. So you learn different skills, balance, catching things in a crowd, dealing with people bumping you around on a basketball court that you can take to a football field. And he is a very athletic kid. He's tall and long and rangy, and quarterbacks can just throw it up to him, and he can go out jump any defensive back on the field. So I think that's what he brings to the field. Now, is he the most physical, toughest tight end I've ever seen? No, but he is that like elegant, really athletic tight end that, you can split out and then cause just matchup problems all over the field. Plus he can get down the field pretty quick and stretch it pretty well. So he's definitely the number one tight end in the class right now. There are others, nipping at him though, because Caden Prothrow's basically like Caleb Odom was last year. Brock Harris is the bigger inline tight end, maybe like a Michael Mayer type. But Harrison has that multi-sport capability, plus, that production on the football field that we love to see.
Yeah, I think Harrison's probably the smoother athlete between him and Prothrow, but Prothrow is super explosive. I'm really excited about him. I was just talking to John Garcia about Prothrow being one of the new high debuts in the Rivals 250, and he just looks like a special prospect. Before I let you go, Adam, I wanted to also talk about the running backs in the 2026 class. Number one at the position is Savion Hyder out of Virginia. A really great player. He's a strong, smooth athlete. He has great vision. He can break tackles. He's sets up defenders well, and he's kind of a do-everything guy for his team in Virginia at Woodbury Forest School. They don't play great competition. Doesn't have too much talent on his team helping him out, but he's still able to create big plays. But nationally, Hyder may be number one, but this group may be lacking at the top end, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Right now, I think the 2026 running back class is a little weaker in terms of quality at the highest end. Every year, we sort of battle over two names, maybe three some years as 5 stars, and is well documented. We're trying to get away from more 5-star running backs as their position value becomes less and less in the NFL. But this year, we're not really in the 5-star discussion on any of them yet. I think that could change. Hyder will be in that discussion the more we see him. Tredarian Ball is an interesting one as a track kid who got a Georgia offer right after running a really great track time. And then just from muscle memory, not having any Florida running backs in the top 6 kind of scares me a little bit. And then I don't want to forget Davion Gross at all-purpose back. And we've talked about this. He's a little Ollie Gordon-esque at Oklahoma State, kind of a tall, upright runner, maybe a little faster than he looks, and can kind of just has a feel for getting in the open field and breaking away. So I don't think right now this is the best running back group we've ever seen, but I think there is potential for other guys to emerge down the line.
Yeah, really like Ball's speed, like you said, 10.5 in the 100-meter earlier this year. Gross, you mentioned his on-field production similar to Ollie Gordon, and he has a similar style to Ollie Gordon. But this past season on the field, we have him listed as an all-purpose back, and rightfully so. He was a nearly 50-50 split in his rushing yards and receiving yards, and he's got great feet for a running back, really light on his feet, and yeah, like you also mentioned, might be a little bit faster than he looks on film. So we'll have to see where things go from here. We've got a few commits already in this group. Messiah Mickens is committed to Penn State. I think Jonathan Hatton to Oklahoma. And there's somebody else I'm forgetting. Racine Guillory to Texas is already committed already. So there's a few guys here that we're definitely going to track over the next couple of years. We're going to see a lot more of them as well. But Adam, that really does it for this edition of the Rivals Rankings podcast. Your National Recruiting Director, Adam Gorney, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm National Recruiting Analyst and Rankings Director Adam Friedman. Please remember to subscribe to the Rivals.com YouTube channel and follow all of the Rivals social media accounts. And of course, you can find all of our content on Rivals.com.